She's moved. She's from Paris. She's at the Paris office.
I like them. Was the last one you did were?
Jenna, how are you?
We just talked about it on our videos on. What was this? I thought maybe you had taken it for that. I did it so. It's in the fact it's no box. That's nice. I agree. Yeah, thank you. I love a big hug.
Not normally a hugger.
3 or 4 in last time.
Okay, it's 2 o'clock. Let's get started. All right, so, oh, perfect. I was looking for you and you weren't here until just now. So I'm going to break ranks and do something without telling her. And because she posted it, so.
I'm like pumped now.
Great, I know, great announcement. If you didn't see it on our, Haley, on our Facebook page, you would have found out that Amy Mooney bought her first rental property.
Brad and Jessica first. It's like, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, so I want you to walk us through that. You know, I'll give you the first piece of the backdrop. When she started taking the class, she says, well, I want to learn about this. I'm not ready yet, but I want to learn about this. And I said to you at the time, I said, that's the best thing to do to get ready, to learn about it. And so then I see this post on Facebook. So tell us what happened.
Oh, and now my lender now is gonna do a cash out refi on my house to see how many more I can buy. So this one I didn't need that for, but now we're gonna see.
So how did this house come up? How did this house come up?
You know how they said like for their, if they go into a house for a listing presentation, if the person doesn't want to go on market, they're like, I'll offer you this right now. Well, I posted on my Facebook group for my neighborhood that my mother-in-law wanted to move down here end of spring. Does anybody know of anything coming up? And someone sent me a private message and said, we don't want to go on market. And it's actually a realtor that owns it, so I'm not screwing anybody. But their floor plan was listed right now. Another one is 385. It's actually under contract. I called the agent. It's under contract at 420. They're like, it's the same floor plan as the 385 that's on market right now. We know we have repairs, so we would take it down to 365. But since you're a realtor and we don't have to pay fees, we'll take it down to 345. But we had a cash investor offer us 330 as is, and we don't have to touch anything. So I'll offer it to you for that. I was like, I'm sorry, what? It's like,
This is the seller? Just let that
the seller is a realtor, and so.
have them keep negotiating.
I know, I didn't even open my mouth, and I was like, what? Yes,
You're
please.
this champion negotiator.
But 20,000 put into it, and it's worth about 425. With 20,000, like.
When do you close on it?
April 1st, because we're closing on her house up there. She's actually, my mother-in-law is taking her money and dividing from the sale of her house, dividing it, giving it to the 3 kids now. She said, here's your inheritance now. So we're taking that money and
So there's your source of funds.
that's my source of funds. And
Who's going to occupy it initially? Is your mother?
actually mother-in-law, yeah.
Her mother?
So we're renting it to her.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then she's like, it's.
So you're
you know,
not
it's
really
your
going to
house.
have any vacancy to speak of. You won't really have any property management.
She's gonna be basically paying the rent, so that's, we're not, or, you know,
Okay.
paying the mortgage, that's about it, but we're taking all of the appreciation and over 75,000 in equity already.
Okay, so the part that you adopted from the Matterns was the change of mindset.
Yeah, some people don't wanna go on market, and you're not screwing
Wait a
them.
minute. Okay, you said that. Now, that's not, whether they want to go on market or not, they want to add an option to not go on market.
Correct.
Okay, so they don't have to tell you they don't want to go on the market. Matter of fact, they can tell you that they want to list their house. And your mindset now says, that's fine.
Yeah.
But here's one more thing you might want to think of as an alternative. If not, we'll list it. That's the way it goes. You don't want to wait for people to announce to you they don't want to go on market. You want everybody to have the option to sell their house direct.
Yeah.
Right?
So now I want to find other people that want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my lender said, do a cash out refi. Like you guys said, I was like, okay, so I've got a few $100,000 equity in my house. And he's like, take it all and go buy some more.
So here's an idea for you, because we're getting a little momentum going here. Can you feel this? We're getting a little bit of momentum, even if you haven't bought anything yet, you've heard enough success stories that you're starting to catch on. So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, what if I said to you, I'll pay you a $5,000 commission bonus for anything you bring to me that I decide to buy? Would you pay $5,000 for the right property?
Possibly.
I would.
I would.
Well, I'm not committing anything. I said for the right property. And if it's under market, if it's 330 and she thinks it's worth 385 or more,
On the market.
then would I pay $5,000 on top of her commission? I would. So I'm putting that offer out to all of you. If you find me the right property, I'm willing to pay you a $5,000 bonus.
Can I bid against you?
Put in your own estimate.
Okay, so Amy, congratulations. Keep us posted. Let's give Amy a big hand. So two things strike me, change of mindset and overcoming fear. Overcoming fear. And her fear initially was fear of the unknown. And she said, well, heck, not that there's not as much to know as you think you have to know.
You can buy under market right now.
Yes, yes, you
Figure out
can.
any lending you have to take it.
Okay, so again, congratulations and thank you for sharing that. We had a homework assignment, and the homework assignment was to take our property at 1309 Berkeley Court and kind of run some numbers on it, right? So I would assume some of you have done it and some of you haven't. That's fine. Some will, some won't. There's a whole nother thing on that. But so let's go with this. So somebody start us off. What did you decide rent would be? What's the rent? Jay, you have yours. What's your rent?
Well, one of the sources, Renometer, is saying for a 2-2, $1,700 a month, but what jumped out to me was nothing in MLS in over a year, so I was wondering if it's an HOA issue as well.
So what's what'd you call it?
Renometer, it's a
Is that an
source
app?
for, it's a website,
Oh, Rent-A-Meter.
yeah.
I had 2,200, 22 to 40, 24.
And how did you get yours?
I just took rentals in the area.
Plus you guys also have like 10 or
Right.
12, so you have a bank of knowledge. So you picked 2,200. Who else had a rent number? Where'd you get it? He also went to MLS, check comps, Rent-O-Meter. Who else got a number? Anybody else have a number?
1,800.
1,800? How'd you get 1,800?
It took the low end and the high end and kind of went in between
The low end and the high end. How'd you get the low end and the high end?
off the internet.
Off the internet? MLS?
Looking at, yeah, MLS.
Okay. Okay, so you split the difference and you got 1,800. Who else? Anybody get a number? What'd you get?
We went with the high end because we're gonna renovate first, so Brett and I did this together.
Okay.
With 2,700,
2,700.
because we're gonna renovate and it's gonna be
Okay.
really nice.
Okay. So, but where did you get 2,700? I know why you went high, but what determined what high was?
We looked at the ones that are leased in the area,
So again, MLS comps.
at MLS comps, yeah.
Okay,
And they were up to 2,800.
okay. MLS comps, personal experience, Rent-O-Meter. Anybody else? Okay, so I got 2,200. How did I get 2,200?
That's Terry.
Called a property manager. Called the property manager. Here's what I said. 2,600 square feet, but 500 square feet of it is converted garage. Built in the mid to late 80s, nice neighborhood, Russell Creek area. 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath. There was a little bit of a gas on the other end. And I said, what will it rent for? And I said, in pretty good condition, because one of my assumptions is I'm going to take $15,000 and bring it up to speed. Not high end, bring it up to speed, but just make it clean and habitable and, you know, and 15 may be wrong, but that's an assumption I made, that I could do it for 15. Here's what the property manager said. By the way, do you have to do business with that property manager for that property manager to give you this number? Nope. The property manager said the Russell Creek area around 2,100 square feet, range 2,000 to 2,350, average 2,185. I hope that's helpful. These are all 3-bedroom with 2-car garage. So as you mentioned, the conversion may kind of balance out the 2-bedroom. Because that conversion created, if you recall, 3 living areas. You could take one of those living areas and stick 4 kids in it or something. You could. All right, so the issue isn't so much what you picked, it's what sources did you go to find data, right? Everybody understand that? Okay, so let's go to the next idea. How'd you finance this baby? What was your financing package?
30-year.
30-year mortgage.
25% down.
25% down.
It's cash flows monthly. I had the same numbers as you. I was at $450 a month without property management.
Okay. What did you do about the repairs?
I didn't even address it up front. I was just looking at, is
Okay.
this something worth considering?
All right.
And I could, if there's plenty of gap there at 450, I knew I could improve it.
Sort of improve it on the fly.
Right.
Okay, all right. Who else? Who else had an idea on how they did it? Jay, how'd you do it?
I had a problem, well, I shot it down right away with the ARV, with it being the 2 beds, 2 baths. Hard to figure out what that number would be.
Okay. So you didn't come up with a number for
Yeah,
repairs?
and then I did it real quick, and I was like, okay, cash on cash is probably about 50%. Multiple offers, needs work.
Okay, so you're not looking at it as a terribly great candidate. Okay, that's fine.
But with your money, I will lock it.
Wait a minute, there's a problem with the microphone. All right, anybody else have a thought, an idea, a set of assumptions? Did anybody figure out what the amortization would be, what the monthly payments would be on a note? What would your monthly payments be?
Principal, interest, taxes, insurance was $1,750.
What?
On 30-year, 25% down, $1,750.
$1,750, but that's PITI.
PITI.
All right, let's see.
Plus HOA. Plus 33 HOA.
Hold on.
So it's 1750.
Okay, that's pretty close to me, pretty close.
I did 1690,
You did what?
1690 monthly with the 20% down payment. Taxes $399, insurance $272, HOA 33, and interest and principal $986.
What were your taxes? 500?
Taxes were $399.
Okay,
488.
I bumped mine up a little bit, because I think they're due for a new appraisal. A new assessment. Okay, anybody else have any thoughts? Okay, so what I did was I put 20% down, and then I assumed I was going to spend 15,000 out of my pocket, which happens to be about 5%. So I'm going to have really 25% in it. Okay, but I think the 15,000 I put into it for repairs brings the value up to at least 315. That's what I'm thinking. Now, I agree with Jay. This is going to be a hard property to get. Okay, and that's not the point of the exercise either, right? Point of the exercise is, okay, so how do I start this off? Well, I mean, PITI and HOA takes care of just about everything, especially if you're managing it yourself. If I'm managing, if I get it to a property manager, it's gonna cost me half the first month's rent for leasing, at least half, and 10% of rents collected for management. Now, let me tell you what, and Amy's is a little bit unique, and Mattern's had a couple like this. If you don't have a built-in tenant, if it's not the seller, you had a couple where the seller was the tenant for a little while, still is in one of them at least.
Yeah.
And you've got a built-in tenant with your mother-in-law, okay? If you're buying a property and there's no built-in tenant, one of the conditions of buying the property is the right to show it to tenants, so that when you close on it, the tenant moves in. Now, you probably can't get the tenant in before closing, probably don't want to, but you want the tenant ready to move in immediately. So that can be a provision in the contract that says, once we remove all contingencies, you have to allow me to show the property, or the property has to be shown, can be shown to prospective tenants. Everybody understand that? Because if you can cut out a month of vacancy, that's $2,000 plus or minus. Everybody understand that? Now, is that the deal? Is that a deal killer?
Not necessarily.
Huh? Repairs the same way, depending on what they are.
Show the house ugly.
Well, yeah, it depends on what ugly is, right? Jay's making a good point. Okay, Jana,
What was your property management cost per month after the initial half month's rent?
$220, 10% of 2,200. And I didn't ask him this, the first, half the first month's rent's 1,100. I don't think he charges 10% in the month leased. I think it just goes to the 1,100. So I had 1,100 plus $220 times 12, assuming it was, and if I had the tenant ready and I had made repairs, I figured my first year, I don't have any vacancy. And I figure I don't have any real repairs because I'm spending $15,000. I did put in a maintenance number just to cover myself. I put in $500 for the year. And that's just, a little this, a little of that. Tommy?
You said 212 times 12 or 11?
220
220 times 12 or 11?
times 11. Because I didn't ask JC this. I don't think he charges 10% of rents collected in the month he leases it.
Yeah.
He gets half the month, he gets $1,100, and he doesn't pile 220 on top of that in that month.
Yeah.
I think that's right, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So here's what I've got. I call this cash on cash. Now, this is still rough because when I do PITI, what's in there that's really not an expense?
Interest.
No, yes, it is. Principal. Principal is not an expense. Is it a cash flow item? Oh, yeah. Yeah. And which way does the principal reduction go? Yeah, cash flow goes out. So I included it, but it's just a little tweak. And I figured I have $26,400 in income at $2,200 a month. And my expenses were $25,590, which gave me $810, which I for the year, which I call cash on cash. Cash on cash. Now, remember, there's an adjustment because of principal, but it's still a cash flow item. But there's one more thing that's a cash flow item. What is it?
Depreciation.
Yes, depreciation. So if I depreciate, and if I depreciate, you remember what Lance said, if you didn't hear it, maybe I've said it too, you can't depreciate the land. So you have to divide the value between land and improvement. Everybody remember that? Now, when you do that, what do you want the improvement to be, higher or lower? Uh-huh. Well, yeah, as high as possible. You want the land to be the improvement to be as high as possible because you want to increase the depreciation. All right, so what I did was I just assumed on the 300 or the 315 that 240 was improvement. Just for numbers' sake, $240,000 was the improvement divided by 27.5 years. That's an $8,725 tax loss. Now, that's a tax loss. What's the tax impact of having an $8,700 loss? You take your tax rate times the $8,700, let's assume you're in the 30% tax bracket. That means, and you would net that against the 810 cash. So you actually come up with a tax savings of $2,375 for the year. $2,375 for the year, plus you get the $810 of actual cash. So I'm at $3,600 of positive cash flow. Right? Now, is that the big payoff? That ain't even the big payoff. What's the big payoff? Appreciation. So what I did was I went 5 years out, and the first thing I did was figure out what my $240,000 note, what's it going to be in 5 years? 217. 217. And then I figured that I paid 300, but I put 15 into it. So I had a $315,000 asset. 5 years later, at 3% appreciation, it's worth $365,000. So $365,000 in 5 years minus the $217,000 mortgage balance gives me $148,100. And what did I put into it? 75. But I've actually gotten $3,000 a year. If nothing major happens, $3,000 a year times 5 years, $15,000 in positive cash flow too. Is that a fairly good deal? Yeah.
I want to find more money.
Huh?
I want to find more money.
Yes. Now, one thing we have not mentioned, home warranty. Home warranty might not be a bad idea for your first year, even if you had to pay for it. Because what you don't want to see in your first year is an $8,000 air conditioning replacement. I mean, you could argue that you'd want to use it every year, but at some point, 400 or 500, there's a reason that it's available for $400 or $500. The actuarial will tell you that you probably don't need it for the life of the house, right? So, but it's just one of those things to think about in your first year, a home warranty, even if you have to buy it yourself.
It's tax deductible.
Hmm?
It's deductible.
Oh, yeah, it's an
Yeah.
expense. It's
Yeah.
deductible, right? All right. Okay, any questions about how this went? Everybody see that we have a logic? It's not that hard. So I have P&I, taxes, insurance, homeowners association, maintenance, and leasing and management. Which if you're leasing and management, doing it yourself, your cash flow is about, I mean, and then you take depreciation, you're somewhere around $6,000 plus $6,000 of cash flow a year. But you put 25% down. Well, in a way I did too.
Yeah.
In a way I did
You
too.
spent it
I just got a
all.
20% down mortgage and then 15 in cash. All right, everybody good on this? Any questions, any comments? Was it a useful exercise for those who went through it?
I did call the agent, just ask her a few questions. And they did sell it for the price because they'd already had an appraisal on it.
They sold it for 300.
I would have thought it would have went way over.
I'm surprised. Yeah, I'm surprised it did. But you see, there was really not much motivation to sell it for more because it was a short sale. So a short sale, what's the seller getting out of it no matter what? Nothing. And what's the bank going to look at? Probably quickest sale, or although you'd be surprised about banks. They don't always look at it that way. They're an odd bunch. From one bank to the next, they have what's most important to them. Highest price, quickest sale, cleanest deal. It would be, essentially the bank is the seller. It's not technically right, but for all intents and purposes, that's what it is. So you would ask the bank through the agent the same questions you would ask a normal seller. So what's most important to you? Right? Highest price, quickest sale, least amount of hassle. In other words, cleanest deal. All right, good on this? Okay. I think we're gonna do it again, but not now, because I'm gonna be out next week. I'm gonna be out next week, but that's okay. We have to let the next part soak in for 2 weeks. So we got our guest lecturer. Everybody give Lindsay a big hand. Lindsay Knight, come on up here, Lindsay.
We have Nick on the screen too. Is there any way of making him capable of speaking?
I don't, not through me.
I think he just unmutes. Okay, Nick, unmute. He's the smart one y'all really want to hear, so.
All right.
Can you hear
me?
Yes.
Can you hear us? Can we hear you? Try it. Yes, 1, 2, 3.
Testing 1, 2.
Okay, good. All right.
Can I sit?
So the reason he's at home is he's not feeling very good. So
He does not have COVID, so.
that is good. All right, so we're gonna let Lindsay take a little bit more of the lead, though. Is that okay with you? Okay,
Perfect.
Take the lead shortly.
yeah, okay, well, that'll be up to you. So the first thing I'd like to do is kind of get an established idea of how many properties do you guys have? Now, they have a combination, as they'll tell you, and we'll talk about why they've decided to do it the way they're doing it. But Nick has his own properties, and then they have shared properties. All right, so we'll start with Nick. Nick, how many properties do you own by yourself?
I have
Not
3
count- not
rentals
counting
by
your
myself.
homestead. Not counting your homestead.
Right. Three that are rentals.
3 rentals,
Mhm.
and then how many jointly?
We have 2 jointly.
2 jointly so far.
Yep, 2 personal residences and 2 ranches.
Okay, so let's talk, Nick, about your first one was in somewhere in the 2012 to 14 range.
That's correct. So in
That's your first
2000,
one?
that is yes, that was my first investment purchase.
Right,
So basically what happened there, similar to Amy, is I needed to buy a house for my mom, and she was living in an apartment. So I worked with Denton and bought one over in Plano in 2012 for $148,000.
okay. So you've had it now 8 to 10 years. Your second one was a converted residence.
So actually the second purchase was in 2018, and it was a property in Carrollton that I went on a listing appointment for. And in conversations with that seller, he just had a unique situation where he was like, I want to be able to stay in the property for 6 months. It was pretty run down. All the dogs had torn out all the floors. He said, he's like, I don't want people to come in here and be fixing it while I'm in here. And so I basically just looked at it and said, how about I pay you $160,000 for it? And he's like, that'd be great. So then I just got a regular 25% down investment loan and closed on it. He stayed in the property 6 to 8 months or so. And I just made the deal with him that he could pay what he was paying previously on his mortgage, which was $1,100. And then when he moved out, I put about 15 into it and put it back on the market for rent.
And what's it renting for now?
I have it at 1,700 now.
Okay, and it's in Carrollton.
It's in Carrollton.
And what about
and
number
then-
3?
So the third one that I have as a rental was my personal residence that I bought in 2002, and in Garland, paid $183,000 for it. And then when I bought my current personal residence in 2020, I converted it to into a rental property, and it rents out at $1,800 a month. And my brother-in-law and sister-in-law live in it.
Okay, so that's technically the one you've owned the longest, even though part of the ownership wasn't rental.
Correct.
Okay, so that's probably the one you have the most equity in.
One of them I paid cash for, the 2012, but as far as the
Oh,
ones
pretty
that
close
bought-
between those two. Now, you haven't done the cash out yet, have you?
So I did do a cash out on a small cash out on the one that was the personal residence that I moved over. And that was when Lindsay and I were buying our first rental together.
Okay. So let's go to the ones you're doing together. You have 2.
Yep.
Can you describe those?
Yep.
When did you buy them? Where did they come from?
So the first one was February of 2020, closed in March 2020. A teammate came to us and needed to get out of a significant amount of debt and had it tied up into her house. She didn't want to cash out refi. She just wanted to sell it. And so this is where the partnership came in. We were both sitting in the room and just looked at each other and said, okay, we'll buy it.
Okay, so now you guys are longtime friends, family friends. That was
We've
part of
worked
the
together
deal,
for
why
8
you,
years now.
yeah, well, you've worked together for 8 years. So that's part of why you did it together.
Mhm.
And it was a person on the team, so the question wasn't, well, I mean, you don't want to bid against each other, so it just made sense to do it collectively.
Yeah.
And,
she stayed in
and it was less of a financial burden for either one of you individually.
Yes, so she stayed in it
For how long?
until last month. So year and a half, year and 9 months. And then her ex-husband moved in so that the kids could stay in their same schools.
Okay, so,
So he's lived in the same property, the ex-husband, for 7 years, Nick, 7 years maybe, since they divorced. So we cut him a deal on rent and assume that he will never move out
oh, okay.
to keep
Alright.
the kids in their schools.
So remember this, a little bit less in rent is way better than vacancy,
Correct.
way better.
Without a doubt.
And repairs that need to be made to the home.
Right,
He doesn't care about.
okay.
So just
So,
maintenance.
what about the second one?
The second one we closed on in December, Nick, or November.
November.
2021. It's in Mesquite. A team member went on a listing appointment in Mesquite and the homeowners were willing to sell it off market, so nobody had to walk through it. So we went and walked it and bought it.
Now, on that particular one, did the seller volunteer that they'd like to sell it without putting it on the market, or did the team member know enough to offer that as an option?
Yeah, so part of on the team, doesn't matter what listing appointment they're going on, this script is here the different ways, and it's homeward, it's.
Okay, so they
Before you sell
made
something,
that
buy
change
whatever.
in mindset. You already made that change in mindset, and that was partially due to Denton. Kind of
Yes.
addressing that with the team, that you really ought to consider buying anything that wants to be listed.
Yeah, I mean, I think after we bought the one in 2020, the whole team knew that Nick and I were in the market for X amount of dollars, whatever type of property. So anybody going on a listing appointment, basically under 300,000, they'll bring to us and we're willing to look at.
Okay, so talk to us about why you guys teamed up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easier to replenish funds for 25% down on a $250,000 house. It was pretty easy for him and I to come by and replenish funds of half of that versus needing to come up with $60,000, $70,000 on your own. We can come up with 30 pretty easily. And then it splits the work. So he bought one and then this last time was my turn to buy it. So I had to do all the loan paperwork and all the crap and whatever. And then we each take point on the property per se that we bought. So the one that we bought in November is vacant right now as of this weekend. And so I'm point on that one. So yesterday I was calling the city of Mesquite and setting up water and whatever. So it just splits the work in half, splits the funds in half. We trust each other, obviously, indefinitely. So it was a good partnership. Yes, Tony?
Are y'all an LLC or partnership?
Yeah, so it's a series LLC and after closing, we just deed it. Our title guy deeds it into our LLC.
So one of the things that we talked about, and I this is important, because I initially assumed that Nick was the first one to invest of the two of you. That's not necessarily true. I don't know exactly, but you had an investment opportunity by yourself, you and Austin. And I want you to tell them about that.
Austin bought a property in 2003 in Little Elm for $145,000, his first house. After we moved out in 2012, I think it was, we kept it as a rental for 3.5 years. We had 3 tenants over that time frame. Every single tenant left after a year. One fell through the ceiling. One ripped up carpet, chewed all of our blinds. One had a deceased animal inside that had feces all over the carpet, which an agent in this office showed the house when Denton had it listed, when we were listing it for lease and called Denton, so I don't think your landlords know that it looks like this. And so we were every year having to put in thousands of dollars. We were in our 20s and that was a sucky feeling at that age. So we sold it the second we were above and we could make some money. We offloaded it and it sold in December for $325. And I would give my right arm to still own it today.
Okay, but you went through this bad experience and it did kind of dim your enthusiasm for a while.
Yep.
And so one of the things that partnering up with Nick kind of brought to the table was a little bit of stability and a little bit of comfort.
Yeah.
That if all heck breaks loose again, we at least can attack this together.
Well, and I'll be really honest. So my role on DARE for years has been director of sales, and that's hiring, training, and holding accountable. Well, Nick is one of my amazing agents, one of DARE's. And so I got to he wanted to be held accountable to his net worth for the last however many years, Nick, right? And so every week I sat down with him and I watched his spreadsheet of his net worth, and he let me see into behind the curtain of everything. And as I started watching his real estate investments stack and the appreciation stack, and that he's awesome. Obviously, mom lives in one, brother-in-law lives in one, like these awesome tenants that are not moving out, paying them off. Brought my enthusiasm back a little bit.
So Nick, you were tracking your net worth on a personal financial statement type basis weekly?
I would look at it probably more monthly, just
Monthly?
from running. Well, okay, initially it was monthly because of doing the analysis on the market value and whatnot. And then I moved over to like an app, excuse me, an app, and I track it on Mint. So now I watch it twice a day.
Yeah. Now, as part of your analysis, does part of your analysis take into account the amortization of the loans that are outstanding?
Yes.
All right, everybody understand what I just said? So that's really kind of fun once you have an amortization schedule available to you that you say, guys, in the last 6 months, my loan went down on this house by $452 and on this house by $388 and on this house by $500. I've made $1,200 just thanks to the tenant paying down on my loans. It becomes a game in a way, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And I take that one step further when you were talking about refi. And so on, a couple of mine, I have improved the property and waited till appreciation's gone up, cashed out refi, took all my cash out of those properties. And to where now my tenant, it's just basically buying me a house. And then took that money and did other things with it.
So you did the cash out refi. Wasn't the tax liability kind of uncomfortable?
How do you mean?
Well, when you took money out of the house, that was taxed, wasn't it?
No.
Oh, my gosh.
I thought you were trying to trick
I
me.
didn't realize that. It was tax-free money.
It's already my money.
Yeah, it's already your money. That's a good way to look at it. Okay, so you're holding him accountable, let's call it monthly. At some point, you decided maybe Austin and I should do this. Because you weren't doing it initially, or maybe you weren't doing it as frequently.
After our experience in our 20s, no, I didn't want to own another rental. I wanted to put my money with a financial advisor and let somebody else deal with it.
Okay, but you weren't tracking your net worth
No,
on a regular
we were not.
basis.
Mm-mm.
But at some point, helping him track his and seeing it, you guys kind of got the bug again. And you knew if you were to start investing that you needed to start tracking your net worth.
Yeah, so we started tracking net worth. And then when Nick and I bought the property in March of 2020, the following month, I went on a listing appointment with a past client that had a slab leak in their home. McKinney, they just wanted out. They did not want to make a dollar. They wanted to break even. And I told them, if you repair the slab leak, you could probably net close to $80,000. Nope. House is falling off a hill, slab leak. Nope. We just want to walk away. Took it to Nick. We looked at it. We had just drained our accounts. He was doing two different things at the time. We were putting a pool in. We bought the rental property from the team member. We could not do it. So he took it to one of his investors, bought it. My clients broke even. That's all they wanted to do. His client did the repairs. It ended up being $4,500 in repairs. That's all. The house is, Nick's about to list the house for what?
I'm gonna list it at 400 every month.
They sold it to his investor for $205.
Well, but the investor had to put 4,500 into it.
So I was saying, we decided then to never be in a situation again where we did not have that $30,000 set aside, that any opportunity we could do. And that one gets brought up all the time. When the client just called and said he wanted to move, we both almost threw up when he looked up the comments.
So having.
We also
cash
said we'd never
available-
talk about it.
Having cash available, having cash available fairly soon is important, or having cash available immediately is very important? Immediately.
We gotta be able to.
Immediately. And making a decision to buy or to not buy, do you have to do that quickly, or do you have time to think about it? Quickly, particularly in this market. All right, so what's the goal for the future? And will everything, unless something unusual happens, will everything go into the LLC?
Yeah.
Or is it-
I think our goal is to at least do one a year.
One a
And then
year.
obviously if the opportunities present themselves and the funds are available, then we'd be open to do more than that. And then it's long-term. I don't think we have, 20 years. I'll probably die and they'll get willed over to them or something. So
That was strategic on my part. He's a lot older than me.
She made a rather derogatory comment. It was a little under her breath, so, but you probably can imagine what she's working on here, yes. So you guys are definitely a buy and hold, which is the wealth building strategy, not the cash strategy. Have you even tried to put a pencil to it, or have you just know it kind of conceptually? 5 years from today, now 5 years from today, and I'll talk about together and yours, but 5 years from today, you'll own about 10 or 12 houses. So most of them by that time will be in the LLC, but you'll have just a couple outside. But 5 years from today, can you imagine what kind of equity you'll have then in total? And what's that equity represent?
Net worth.
Opportunity.
Net worth.
Opportunity.
Because it is potential cash out refis. You've got a couple of cash out refis ready to go now on your first couple. You not on the LLC yet, although maybe.
Our first one is getting close to being able to cash out refi and buy a second one because it's McKinney. We bought it for 208 and it's worth up mid to upper threes now.
Okay, so if it's worth
325.
325, let's say, but you didn't borrow, how many, what's the loan amount? So you paid 208, but what's the loan amount? So just give me a number,
I've got
160.
168. I've got
All
it
right,
right here.
so 170. So remember, that's part of the equity. The first down payment is part of the equity. And so you've got about let's call it $160,000 of equity. And you're gonna have to put 20, you're gonna have to maintain 20%. So if it appraises for 325, that's $65,000. So you got about $100,000 in cash out refi, actual money. So you could buy 2 more. Actually, together you could buy 4 more.
There you go.
Okay. All right, any questions for either one of these guys?
Can I ask you, Lindsay, what do you said you're doing this under series, the first series. Do you have thoughts of creating a second series for something else? And who owns the master LLC?
We are partners in the master LLC. Each house is in a separate series.
Okay.
Everybody hear that?
I think
Each house is
it costs like a couple $100 for our attorney to do the new series each time we buy it. And then the initial is like $2,000 to get the master done.
So what that's going to do is allow some sort of autonomy for each house. Let's say you wanted to sell one house. Let's say something happened. You're not having to dip into a series that has 3 or 4 houses in it and pull one out. That's one thing that makes it easy.
It also isolates the liability within that single asset without having to create a whole new LLC for each one.
Okay. So you haven't had any, so far you haven't had any problems with the lender, like you did one in your name, and then you did one in your name, and then you put it into the LLC, which technically is a little iffy in terms of the way the mortgage reads. But I would guess as long as you're making your payments, there's really not anything that they're going to come after you about. Everybody understand what I'm saying? In the way the deed of trust used to read, and I think it reads the same way, you're really not allowed to sell the property without paying the mortgage off. I forget what they call that now. But you can't do that. So the best way to do it without being able to do it, is make sure the payments are current. And then they're not gonna, they got other things to deal with. For the most
Yeah,
part.
I was told a couple things. One being, if you're a named member in the LLC, then it's not as big of an issue. And then the other thing, make sure you're up to date on your payments. And then also to not to escrow any of your like insurance or taxes, for the reason that then the lender is like kind of keyed into the insurance.
They're put on notice, right? Okay, everybody hear that? Yeah, that's a good point. Now, in a owner occupied property, if you don't escrow, it costs you a little bit more, is about 1/4 of a point to not escrow. I don't know, is that still the same?
There's an upfront fee.
Huh?
There's an upfront fee.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a one-time
bucks.
deal, just a one-time deal.
But imagine if you have all these properties and you're escrowing all of your own. So you're putting your money, instead of giving it to lender, putting your own money into a high yield account yourself,
Right,
make more money with your money.
right. Because what are you gonna make for your money in an escrow account at the mortgage company?
They're going to, that's why they're
Nothing.
upfront fees.
Yeah, nothing. That's why there is an upfront fee, but it's not that big a deal.
Right.
But I do like the tip, do the escrow on your own, so you're not making it just completely completely noticed that the lender, that the owner is now an LLC instead of the individual who first borrowed it or bought it.
Without an escrow account, though, it is a higher rate. A
Little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a higher rate. I think it's an extra 1/4 of a point,
Yeah, that's right.
which is a one-time thing as opposed to a higher rate.
I'm sorry, this is my first day in here. Have y'all talked about protection of your investments, LLCs? What to set them up in? Has that been a serious talk?
Liability,
Yeah, protecting yourself.
what?
Has that been a subject in the class?
I
No,
think that's why they're in an LLC, and then we put them in a separate series, so each property is a loan.
so we haven't talked about that in the class. They're the first ones to do this in the class. But they're the first ones who aren't husband and wife, involving two standalone entities, so to speak. And the one thing I would warn you, and we made a point to say this, they've worked together for 8 years, they've been family friends for a long time, but that does not completely absolve them of making sure that they have the same goals. But there again, each house being a separate series, if you guys were to decide to break this apart, then that makes it pretty easy. Okay, any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Just want to comment on checking your net worth every day, or like Nick joked, or maybe didn't joke about doing it twice a day. It sure prevents you from spending money on things, or at least makes you think about it.
Well, honestly, having somebody in my life like Nick, that you heard it if you picked this out of his story, that his first property he bought in 2002, he didn't move out of that house until last year, Nick, or year before?
2020.
In Garland, the house he bought in his 20s, he kept his wife and kids in so he maintained his lifestyle for an extensive period of time until he finally stepped into where he's at now. And you can drastically see his net worth change. He prolongs buying cars, he prolongs buying anything like that. So having somebody close to you in your life that is like that, it created a different conversation around me. And it becomes addicting of making sure you're buying appreciating assets, because Austin and I were really addicted to buying depreciating toys.
So Gary Keller, in the Millionaire Real Estate Investor, Gary Keller tells a story about tracking his net worth, and he had to have someone, it was a little like these two, he had someone holding him accountable for his net worth. And he started tracking it on a regular basis with this guy's help and the accountability that this guy provided. And Gary said he went in and bought a car. And then the next time he did his net worth statement, he realized that his net worth went down. Even though he bought an asset, what is it? It's not an appreciating asset, it's a depreciable asset. So he takes $12,000 and buys a $12,000 car. A year later, the $12,000 car is worth $7,000. And he
And if
goes,
you can prolong that car for 2 years, you can buy yourself another rental car. That's everything in our life has become in $30,000 increments. Like the longer I can prolong X, there's another property. There's another, you know what I mean?
One more question for Nick. What is the app you're using to track your net worth?
Mint.
Mint, MINT.
Mint.
Mint, yeah, okay. I
Set
could,
up your LLC. How did you set that up?
We can get you the attorney.
All right, let's give these guys a big hand.
Welcome.
Thank you, guys. All right, I just have two things I want to share with you that I saw. One, I actually talked about last week, but then somehow I passed it out to you, and then I think Jay started drawing on the back of it or something. Amy did, yeah. So this is lending place, 818-381-0500. You use rental income to qualify, no personal income needed, 3.875, 20% down. Oh, I'm sorry, minimum down payment, 15% down. So it might be worth a call to these people, just even if you're not about to buy something, to educate yourself. And then a great opportunity. Now, this may take all of us, if we think it's as great as I think it is, to pool our money on this deal. So we might create an LLC series 911 right here. This comes from Nicole Gary, the Nicole Gary team. This is a portfolio of investment properties in the Catskills and the Berkshires, the high-end stuff in New York. The asking price is $12,980,000. Your cash on cash, average cash on cash return is 7.71%. The average IRR is 4.71. What's IRR? Internal rate of return, which is a more sophisticated rate of return than the cash. Here it is. The house, or the estate. The estate, this is breaking down the $12,980,000. The estate is $4,795,000, 7 bedrooms, 8 baths, 4,500 square feet in the main house. And then the guest house has 5 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2,500 square feet, and almost 30 acres. The inn, which is a part of the package, at 2.995 million, 14 beds, 7.5 baths, 7,500 square feet. And then the lodge, of course, no package is complete without a lodge. The lodge is 2.995 million, 13 beds, 8.5 baths, 7,000 square feet. And then the bed and breakfast is 2.195 million, 13 beds, 12.5 baths, 1.44 acres. So I figure at 12, almost, let's call it 12 million. Let's negotiate them down to 12 million. $12 million. There's Tommy can't leave yet. There's about 18 of us in here. Take 12 million divided by 18. Let's see what we have to pay. Huh? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, 17. He's gonna miss out though. Anyway, opportunities are everywhere. They're everywhere. Next week, I'm out of town. I'll see you guys back here on the 15th. And we have another, are you back in on the investment?
Yeah, I had to step out and talk to my banker.
Tommy wants 2 shares.
What did Debbie say?
He says, listen to Dick.
Yeah. All right, thank you guys very much. Appreciate y'all.
Oh, wait, hey, you got questions on the chat box?
Oh, well, I'm not managing the chat box. So where are the questions? I can't see
Well,
them.
I just-
Jessica was asking, so I asked for.
Huh? That's what you
Jessica
asked.
asked a couple, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys.
That's great. Sound like it's 3 hours old. You might want to-
If anybody wants information on that package in New York, let me know. That'd be a nice thing to kick off the year, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I was like, I'm missing a couple reps. Thanks, Dave.
That's something to do with the one.
Hey, Dick,
How's it going?
what would be the reason for not buying the property
Yeah, I remember
underneath the LLC to begin with?
What?
Why wouldn't you buy the property under the LLC to begin with?
I think you would have trouble getting it through the mortgage.
That was my guess. Thank you, Dick.
It would be as much red tape as it is for you to buy a property. It'd be 10 times as much. They want the bylaws of the LLC. They'd want voting rights of the LLC. No, just buy it yourself and deed it over.
So we're selling one right now. We're appreciating
My favorite.
it. The amount of extra paperwork.
I suppose under a master LLC, you can divide it into a series LLC under a master LLC. And what they were doing, I think each series was one. So I don't know how many they're gonna have under the master. I think they create another. I don't know. That's a good question to ask.
So, thank you.
Just wondering.
I haven't been, but I probably should. No. Just questions that you may have. I can't even get one. Take all my stuff. Yes, you need to come to this class. I can't get any of my technology. None of it. It can't even download. Can't even get. Download.
Done. I was just speaker, Malay.
He just left.
I shared it with you.
Another good session? Who was the interviewee? Oh, great. Oh, yeah.
So now I'm just re-syncing all myself as.
Don't put me on that, buddy. Well, I know that.
Well, it's also legal protection. Oh, if an accident on one, they can go after all of them. Well, good. Well attended, good.
Luana,
You are the commuting queen. So often.
I do. I didn't come yesterday and I didn't because the Zoom didn't work. So I missed my really important class.